Crews working on the Truckee River Flood Project got a big surprise while they were digging up dirt for a levee they're building next to the Truckee River off of 2nd Street. They uncovered pieces of the first Reno City Hall, including part of the granite City Hall sign.
Amazingly, when they were excavating, they ended up finding some of this wonderful quarried-type stone. In that same manner, there was this particular rock where you could see obvious letters, and there was a large city and then an H on one of them in particular. So obviously we put that to the side. There's, other interesting pieces, but really that was the most interesting piece.
The original Reno City Hall was built in 1906 at the corner of Center and First Streets, where the Cal Neva garage now stands. Back then, it was common for buildings to have their names cut in granite slabs. It was also common for the buildings to end up in landfills.
This was 1963 when the building came down, or in the early 60s at any rate, and it was the whole idea of historic preservation really wasn't something that had caught on, particularly in the West, and that's what you did with old building debris. If it wasn't something you could reuse, you would discard it and dump it in a landfill.
It was a very low area in the river and they wanted to build it up, and so they took any debris they could possibly get from any of the structures and they just placed it here. Well, amazingly, they didn't think necessarily that people would be interested in it, and obviously people are, so it's a very neat find.
The original City Hall was demolished when the city built a second City Hall at Center and Liberty Streets. Story has it that the city planned to use the original sign.
It had been damaged and the ALL part had come off of it at the time that the building was demolished. It had apparently fallen from its location above the front doors and fallen onto the sidewalk and cracked at that time. So I'm sure when they hauled it off to the landfill site, it just continued to break off.
Once more of the dirt work is done here, crews are going to excavate an area right over there near that 17 where they think the A and the 2 L's might be. But just like finding the first part of the old City Hall sign, it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. For the time being, the 1,500-pound sign sits in the yard at the Railroad Museum in Carson City.
It's very similar in color to the granite that was used in the railroad abutments outside of Washoe City. You can still see abutments there, and you'll see it around town in a lot of granite work. Graveyards are full of things like that.
It's fascinating, of course, for people who are interested in history to find parts of old buildings because it sort of demonstrates the life and death stories of important buildings in town. And of course, Reno City Hall was a very important building.
It's important that we know where we came from and what we did and why we're here. And if we don't keep track of the past, then decisions we make today about the future, I think, could be erroneous and misconstrued easily.
The Truckee River Flood Control Project is building the levee and flood wall through an agreement with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, which is working with Walmart to build a superstore in the area. The project is among more than 30-some projects that will take up to 20 years to complete. So far, it has added to Reno's quality of life by unearthing a remnant from its past.